Hey there. Welcome to saas.unbound podcast. I'm your host, I'm Dana, head of growth at SaaS Group, a serial acquirer buying wonderful SaaS businesses to take them to the next level. And here I chat with inspiring founders and experts to get an inside scoop of how they made their business success. And well, today with me is our own founder, Tim Schumacher, founder of SaaS Group, investor in green tech, business angel, list goes on and on. So I'll just stop here. So welcome to the show again, Tim.
Hey, good to be here again.
Yeah, well, excited to talk today a little more about you, maybe a little bit less about SaaS Group, because you've had a fascinating story, built a few very successful companies. Um, so, for those who don't know, maybe in like 1 minute, who's Tim?
Yeah, so I've been an entrepreneur. That's I think probably the best word to describe me. Kind of really from an early childhood where I loved like entrepreneurial endeavors and selling stuff. And then I was a computer nerd for many years. I coded through my teenage years and built some wonderful software, some games and everything. But actually did go to business school. And after finishing that, started a company called Cedo, a domain marketplace, which I'm sure some of you have bought domains at. It's the world's largest domain marketplace. Ran that for 10 years. So I had the whole journey from three founders all the way up to a public company, a couple hundred people. And then left that and started new companies. One is the company behind AdBlock and AdBlock Plus. Another one is Ecosia, the green search engine, and did a ton of angel investments. And at some point, I started dabbling with SaaS and SaaS products, and that's when I started SaaS Group a couple of years ago. I'm not coding anymore. I'm still kind of like the coders. For the coders, I'm always like the business guy. But for the business guys, I'm always like the nerd. So I'm kind of in between. But I love software, and it's just kind of what I've been doing all my life.
Perfect. You minute is up. Thank you, Tim. So, yeah, living up to the expectations when I said, a little more about you, a little less about SaaS Group. So, SaaS Group is kind of still the most prominent thing that you're doing now, or one of them.
Absolutely, it is. It is. Yeah, it's my
So,
main thing. Yeah.
how was it born? Like, I think we did an episode before, but I didn't really ask how the idea came to you. Like, why SaaS Group? Why buying businesses? Why not just going on with investment after your successful exit?
Yeah, so I think a couple things came to play a few years ago when I started it. So one was I did a bunch of angel investments, and some were very successful, but a lot of them, I mean, that's the nature of angel investments. You give someone money at an early stage, usually an unproven founder, and many of them failed, and many of them failed where I wish could have been able to do something. But as an angel investor, you can't. Like you can do a little bit. You can be a good sparings partner to the founder. You can try to help him or her, but at the end of the day, the founders run the show. So as an angel investor, I just had to watch from the side how things just go bust. And also valuations are sometimes crazy. Like people come with some slides and it's like millions the valuation, and at the same time I saw those wonderful businesses people have built, like often independent developer who've built like some fantastic tool. That tool sometimes already makes millions in revenue, but there's really not an exit market. It's not a VC market. It's it's not something most strategic buyers acquire. It's too small for the big private equity companies, but yet those are like wonderful businesses. And that combined actually with my learning from my prior business with AdBlock, where I took a software which was essentially a hobby project of one brilliant developer and develop that into a company of hundreds of people. I kind of put those two things together and it's like, hey, let's serialize this. Let's take many of those wonderful products and see how, with a proper approach of product development, of marketing, of sales, we can take those companies to the next level. And I started with one, and then kind of one came came to the next, and now we have 17 brands, and it's still kind of this original model of taking one project at a time and developing it.
True. And I mean, don't get me wrong, but like with buying companies, it's you're also placing bets, right? Of course, we do due diligences, right? And of course, we have a BI team that would analyze everything and tell us which could potentially be the next, well, not unicorn, right? We're not building unicorns, but still, we're placing bets, and it's, well, we're investing in companies, right? So, how, first of all, is there really like a very big difference apart from the fact that you actually can make decisions and can help the companies? Is there a big difference between the companies you've invested in before or invest in now and the companies that we buy at SaaS Group?
In some cases, not. I mean, I have some companies where I invest which have a bootstrapper mindset, and other companies are classic VC companies where there's one round after the next round, and with all the VC dynamics, and then there's a huge difference. And that's probably, to me, the most fundamental difference is that if you're down the VC route, then usually one growth route follows the next one, and every VC wants to kind of swing for the fences, because you have to always keep in mind that as a VC, you have a portfolio. You have, let's say, if you have 10 companies, to keep it simple, and 9 fail and one becomes a unicorn, you've done a really good job. But life still kind of sucks for the 9 founders who've spent years of their life and it hasn't worked. And compare that to the bootstrapper mindset, where you have 10 companies and all 10 succeed, but on a lower level. That's a very fundamentally different mindset. You're more frugal, you are more resource constrained, but you're also more sustainable. You build things, think of the difference of a fast growing plant, which isn't as stable as an oak, which takes hundreds of years to grow. And to me, that's the fundamental difference between these companies.
Okay. And I mean, I've got this question a couple of times, right? We're always talking about bootstrappers and bootstrap companies and how we like to keep them that way. But then the question was, well, after we buy them, we kind of still invest in them. We give them that umbrella and the knowledge and, the central team that helps them grow. So it's kind of cheating on our own vision of what we're building. But I think how I see it, for example, it's a bootstrapper mindset, right? Not really a bootstrapped setup that we're striving for. So it's, like you said, it's a more frugal approach to the business. Is that what you mean when you're talking about bootstrapping?
Yeah, it's true. It's a good distinction, because we're like, the companies aren't technically bootstrapped anymore. They're part of a somewhat of a corporate even these days. Although every business itself is independent, the company with a couple hundred people, of course, has a certain size and certain processes and everything. But I think the bootstrapper mindset, as you said, that's really what describes it super well, because that's this mindset is like, don't just kind of hire a bunch of salespeople almost randomly, which happens, I think, a lot in VC companies, where really it's like growth at all cost. It's just the mindset of being more frugal with resources. It's the mindset also of profitable growth. Many of you know the rule of 40, of the combination of gross margin plus growth. And there was a time when everybody was kind of discounting, especially like in 2020, 21, everybody was discounting the profitable part, and the growth part is really kind of what everybody was worried about and looking for. For us, it's really a balance. Like if a company, an ideal company for us, is like 20-30% growth and 20-30% profitability margin. And that's kind of, we would say, a steady state, which you can keep for the foreseeable future, which is what I mean with sustainable. It's sustainable growth. It's not just kind of trying to blow something up, kind of the WeWorks and likes, where VCs are just pouring huge sums and it's like growth at all cost. And that's just a different mindset.
Right. I just saw this post on LinkedIn, and it was about earlier times. Like I don't know, it was 2015 or something, but a VP of marketing, one of the companies in England, I think, he was describing a situation where he was a VP of marketing back then already, and his investors basically told him, if you are not going to spend $1 million on ads and growth by the end of the week, you're fired. And I was like, wow, that's fun.
Yeah, that's an extreme case, but those things happen. Yeah,
Yeah. So okay. So we're kind of against that. All right. So
yeah.
like I said, let's talk maybe a little bit more about like what you do, right? Because you've got this awesome story to share. You're investing in many companies, and is it different? What are you? What does Tim Schumacher look for in companies and in teams and in founders when he decides to invest or not?
Yeah, so I think in that regard, what I look for is very similar whether we do an acquisition with SaaS Group or we're looking with my angel investment, or also I have a climate fund, which is one of my areas outside of software where I invest quite a bit. But at the end of the day, I think it all boils down to people. Like I'm always looking, and probably most people would say that, but I'm always looking for people who have the heart at the right place, who have been building something, who ideally share that mindset. Because if someone has a crazy VC type mindset, the founder will not last long because yeah, there's no possibility, for example, for the follow on round after you're part of SaaS Group. You have other advantages, but like you're not part of the VC hamster wheel anymore. Which I would say most founders, like 90% of founders, say is a good thing. But there are some people who love that, and for them, SaaS Group is not the right place. But generally, we look for or I look for people who are, of course, intelligent, who are able to listen to the customers and able to build products that customers really need, and do all of this in this bootstrapper mindset in a frugal, sustainable way. That's generally what I'm looking for, and then everything else is a resulting factor of this. Like, of course, we look at traction, we look at all the metrics which are relevant in SaaS, from new MRR over churn over everything. Like we analyze all those metrics very diligently, but all of that kind of usually a resulting thing from the quality of the founders and the founding team.
Okay, so we are investing or buying companies early enough so that, founder is still a very prominent reason to buy or not to buy.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have at SaaS Group, we have both cases. We have founders who are staying, which is great. We love to work with founders, but we have equally many cases where the founders have built something for many, many years, and they're often tired. It's like, hey, I've built something for 10 years, and I know that feeling. Like after I've built the domain marketplace, Cedo, for 10 years, I was like, oh yeah, I've had my fair share of domain names. I want to see something else, and that's a normal feeling. And some people get that a lot earlier. If you're like an early builder, you love building MVPs and the early excitement of a startup. You like some founders get bored after 3-4 years, and that's okay. That's a very different quality than the quality of scaling a company, which is our quality. And then they come to us and sell it. Or some founders even burn out. Some founders have a hard time actually hiring people. They view hiring as something which is where they're losing control. Always, you lose control if you hire someone. You need to trust another person, and that's hard for some people. And then you're the right person for a one-person startup, but you're not the right person to scale because you got to hire at some point. And I mean, we have pretty good processes for that. And I think we hire great people, but that's a skill you need to develop. And so those founders, if they are stuck as a one person company, but they have tons of customers, we've met founders who are the only customer support person, although they're actually developers, and that can be a daunting task. You're basically, you have no vacation ever, and that doesn't last long.
That's true, right? So about your companies, and I mean, you've grown them substantially. You had your exit, and well, mostly, I guess, when founders start building their company, start scaling it, they are looking at an exit potentially somewhere down the road. So, and in order to sell the company for a life-changing amount of money, you have to show that growth. So, for you, what were the kind of the biggest growth levers that you used in order to reach that exit with both companies?
I think at the end the biggest lever is first of all just building a product people really want and need. So yeah, building sometimes in I'm saying is like you build a painkiller, not a vitamin. There are a lot of products out there which are kind of nice to have, but ideally you build something which really solves a fundamental problem. So I think that's number one, and that involves, of course, listening to the customers, making sure you translate those customer requests into the right products. Also, ignoring the right customer requests. I think building a product is as much about ignoring requests than it is about doing certain things. So really, kind of focusing on what the right things are, which you want to develop, and then do those properly. But also communicate them properly, which is kind of marketing, sales, customer service, so that people actually understand. So I think that's at the end of the day the biggest growth lever, and all of that with the right team. So again, kind of hiring the right people, always people who are better than yourself in certain disciplines. That's the fundamental job of every entrepreneur, and that's whether you're a 1-2 person bootstrapper, or you're a 10 people company, or you're 100. That's those two things are always they never change.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So my next question would be about, kind of like the trend right now on the market, what you see, because 2023, I mean, everyone was kind of afraid to move, right? Everyone was talking about retention. There was a ton of churn because budgets were cut, and with the investors as well, the situation was not very good. No one was really brave enough to invest in
Right.
anything new. But it's only 2 months into 2024, and I've already had a couple of very interesting conversations with people in SaaS who would say,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, well, actually, what we see now, working with a ton of SaaS companies, is that it's turning." Right? And it seems like the situation is being reversed a little bit, and VCs are ready to spend more money. So, what do you think? Is 2024 going to be easier?
Yeah, great question. You probably talk to more people in the space than I do, because most of the founders, they're not in the investment space. The founders we talk to, they we talk about kind of operating, we talk about product and team and everything. So they're not in the game of raising money. So I trust you with your judgment. It's hard to say. I mean, definitely you're right. Like 23 was not good, especially kind of in December. I think looking at the paddle report, for example, it was the first time ever a month was negative across all the SaaS products. And I think as a they have a pretty good overview, given that they're do billing for SaaS products. They have a pretty good overview, and it's kind of what we saw as well. A little dip that at the end of the year, it's kind of this cleanup phase. Like you're going to the budget for the next year, you're doing a post New Year cleanup. So you're canceling all the products you don't need, and then of course New Year means new budget, so new optimism. So it's probably right. If the year overall will be better, well, I guess depends a lot on some geopolitical things, which kind of shouldn't play a role, but they do. I mean, people are psychological animals, so the economy is dependent on that. I hope it'll be an improvement. It's really hard to judge. Some bad thing can always happen. Some geopolitical tension or something, which then has an effect on certain things. It's really hard to judge. But I'm also cautiously optimistic, just like you.
Okay, all right, that's good. Let's stay there. All right, so I also wanted to ask you about the whole bootstrapper mindset and how how to operate there, right? And obviously, we're very serious about being frugal and about cautious spending. But what do you think is something that founders and companies and teams should never really be frugal about? They should always have the budget to spend.
That's a great question. So I mean, I think definitely customer service. So in a way that customers should always get a timely response, a good response. That's always a must. And that's not saying that you shouldn't try to automate that away. Like for example, I'm a big fan of also product people, developers, executives spending some time in customer service, because then you're like, okay, this question, for example, it comes up all the time. We need to change the product because if the customer has to ask a question, it's one question too much. The product should ideally do it itself. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't optimize those away, but the fact if someone reaches out to you that deserves an immediate answer. Also, stats show that sales convert much faster if you're the first one to answer. So if a customer sends a request to 3 companies, very often the first one to answer gets the order. So that is something I think people should never save money on. But then, of course, yeah, if you have a customer service heavy product, then you might be in the wrong market, so you need to do something about it. But in the short run, definitely provide the best service you can.
Okay, all right. And just to follow up to that, what do you see founders and teams spend extensively on, which you think is a luxury and maybe should be avoided?
Well, that's a long list, especially in VC funded companies. People like spend money everywhere. It's like they build hierarchies with a lot of people who are non-productive, who just kind of transport information from one side of the company to the other one, opposed to, I don't know, developers, customer service people, sales people who actually get stuff done. And so I think that's probably the biggest cost block is unproductive people. Um, and that sounds harsh, but that's what happens when a company gets bloated. We see a lot of also bloated SaaS companies where VCs have invested money, they want growth. The company, like crazy example, we had one company we acquired that at its height had 100 people doing 3 million AR. Now the company, now that we've bought it actually out of insolvency, so they went bankrupt for a reason. Now there are 12 people running it. Same ARR and a very productive, very focused team still shipping. And that's an extreme case, but we find those things all the time. And then those companies, I mean, let's take that. I'm not going to name it, but the people within SaaS Group who are part of that, they know which one it is. But like when we acquired that company, we saw all the bloat. Like we got boxes of merch, for example. That's one of my favorite. Like pens, laptops with their logo, T-shirts, everything. It was actually part of the insolvency proceeding that we acquired all the assets of the company. So there was like a room full of merch which was shipped to us, and we're like, oh shit, what should we do with this? But that shows they must have spent tens of thousands of that. Those sorts of things. Or everybody had their own cell phone, a company cell phone, which is also kind of ridiculous. Like we all have cell phones. I'm a big fan of like bring your own device, and yeah, you like for that one call you might get once in a while on your phone. Like the company doesn't need to provide you with a cell phone. It's like we all have one. It's actually a nuisance if you have two. So the list could go on and on and on. Lavish events, cars. We've seen it all on stuff you can spend money. Let me say one last thing. AWS is one big thing. We see a lot of companies which we analyze, which are just spending money for hosting. It's like an afterthought. It's like, hey, we need to build on AWS. The craziest case was once we acquired a company that was making 2 million in annual recurring revenue, and they spend a whopping 1 million, so half of their money, on an AWS bill. And we just basically we took the system, moved it to a bare metal system, so our own servers, and reduced the cost to 100,000 plus, of course, a sysadmin, so 200,000 fully loaded costs. But basically, it was an 80% cost reduction. We published an article on that. I think you find it on the SaaS Group website, because it was such an interesting case. Because everybody thinks like AWS is a must. No, it's not. Like, there are a lot of tasks where AWS is grossly overpriced, and it's just the wrong thing. And there's a reason why AWS is the key profit bringer for Amazon. It's because it's like just too expensive. And so, yeah, that list, I could fill the whole podcast with that.
The next season.
Next season is like, yeah, wasteful spending for SaaS entrepreneurs, how to cut it. That'd be a good session. We should get Toby in there, our CTO, and look at those things from different perspective. But that would be a fun session as well. Very, very practical for SaaS
Okay,
founders.
that's a good
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
I'll write it down. Okay, so by the way, are we moving all of our companies out of AWS at some point?
No, we're
That
not.
said.
We are, no, absolutely not. I mean, there are a lot of cases where hosting is an afterthought. Like, a lot of companies, they're like, I don't know, $1 million ARR, and then it's a $2,000 AWS bill. That's okay. It's like, the developer costs are more expensive, so we're leaving a lot. Sometimes even leaving, then you can cut the costs a little bit by just different quotas and pre-buying and stuff. So there are little tweaks, but that's more like 20-30% saving, not like 80 or something. No, but actually companies, and good that you're asking that, companies are free to choose their hosting and also their other providers at SaaS Group, because they're working independently, but we try to, of course, guide them and prevent some costly mistakes. But overall, yeah, a lot of our companies are at AWS and other cloud hosting providers.
Right. Okay. So let's just stay on the bootstrapping a little bit, because again, 2023, super turbulent. A lot of companies went into more of a startup-y mode, more scrappy, more frugal. So do you know of any example? Can you share any example of like the most brilliant scrappy technique or strategy that you've seen over the year, that you really loved, that a company adopted? Could be SaaS Group, could be any other.
The most in marketing, sales, product development, or
Any.
just kind of like a growth hack
Yeah,
or something,
exactly.
so it's hard to say. There's usually, I think there's not this one growth hack. I wish there were, but then it's usually quickly adopted. But I would say, if there's one channel which, in my experience, is underutilized, is it's different platforms. And so what I mean with that is, if you have a product of whatever sort, then think of other platforms like the Chrome store, the Atlassian store, now the ChatGPT store. Um, think of other, or the Shopify store, whatever, WordPress store. List goes on and on and on, but try to connect into other ecosystems, and those platforms which drive their own customers. That is a very underutilized strategy, and some founders do that really well. And then actually, those platforms can drive a big chunk of revenue. Take one example of our portfolio, for example, where this applies is Juicer. It's a social media aggregator, and they were very early in developing a WordPress plugin. And that one actually drives a lot of traffic and also a lot of customers to the site. And so kind of thinking is like, where are my customers? And then plugging into those marketplaces and those stores, I think is a strategy which every founder should consciously look at for growth. It's also very inexpensive. Like, you need to build this once, maybe, but you can usually do that with a freelancer. But just some hook into that marketplace. That's a good strategy.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one. It makes sense. All right, so a couple more questions about SaaS Group. Let's continue, since we already went in that direction. So a lot of companies and founders, advisors say you have to start building your relationships with potential acquirers or investors early. You have to maybe send them your metrics, or at least be polite answering their emails, when they're approaching you for the 16th time. But what would be your advice on like building those relationships and really going into like a long term, because potentially this could be the people you will end up working with?
Yeah, agree. So I think generally, I mean, I have the same. We get an investor request for SaaS Group all the time. And I would advise every founder to have just a standard email. You don't need to draft that every time, but if founders are annoyed by this, you draft a standard email, which is polite, but points people, either it says like, hey, we're not ready, but please come back in 25 or 26 if you already have something in your mind when you're going to consider that. Or you can also have a PDF or something, a one pager, or even just 3 bullet points. It's like, hey, those are the numbers I can share. Please come back in 2 years, so that you also weed out the companies for which this is not relevant. So, for example, a lot of founders probably get requests from VCs. If they're growing 10, 20% or something, most VCs will not look at them again. So why have people bother you all the time if they would stop bothering you after you've told them that you only grow 20%? On the other side, for SaaS Group, 20% is great. It's a very sustainable long-term growth. We'd be more than happy to talk to you. So sometimes providing a little bit of information, just kind of like maybe the size you're at and your growth, and maybe a link to somewhere on the page, that does the job. And yeah, I'm a big fan of just having a few standard emails. And I have the same. I get or for example, I get a lot of job requests. Like people is like pinging me, is like, hey, I saw you do SaaS Group. I have this. I want to work with you. And I mean, on the one side is like it's nice because those people made the effort to write me. On the other side, I can't respond to all of them. But what I have is I have a standard email. I actually put it in my Gmail just as a signature, because that's the simplest way to approach to approach a snippet. And then just say, like, hey, thank you for that. I just can't respond individually, but here are all our job offers we currently have at SaaS Group. Please go through that link. That does the job. And to me, it has something also about respect, because if someone writes me, they deserve an answer, and that costs me like then 10 seconds, and it's done. And most likely they will go to the career page and they either find something or not. But I would actually advise founders, just for relationship building, to do something similar for everything, because most things can be classified in some sort of thing, and potential acquirers just as much as a lot of other requests you get every day.
Right. And fun fact about Tim, it takes him about 10 seconds to respond. Don't test it.
Yeah, it's true.
All right. So, yeah, just a couple more questions. What's next on the roadmap for SaaS Group? I mean, we all know that we're growing and we want to buy more companies, and there is this new thing that we're talking about. And please elaborate if you can, which is called paved road. So, yeah, what's next? Like, where are we going in 2024?
Yeah, so we aim to acquire about 10 more companies this year. We've been increasing the pace. We've been keeping the size constant. I think that's important. SaaS Group is growing. We're over 50 million in ARR now. And of course, that means if we want to grow further, we need to either acquire bigger companies or acquire more companies. We don't want to acquire bigger companies because we believe in the smallest beautiful segment, and that's the founders we like, and we like to acquire. So we need to do more, but we have a world-class M&A team which can do this. And so this year we're aiming for roughly 10 acquisitions, and then as always in the same segments which we've been playing at, which is developer tools, marketing tools, productivity tools. Been doing some HR and infrastructure tools as well, and trying to add more to our portfolio. And then it is very much following our playbook that we look at, okay, what are inefficiencies in the company? How can we cut some costs? How can we increase the revenues there? But also how can we help bring things to the next level. And then you just mentioned the term paved road, and that's we're using this as a metaphor to show founders there's a paved road and there's an unexplored, adventurous road which is unpaved, and that it's really important for a lot of stuff to stay on the paved road. Like, things like where it's about, I don't know, taking which customer service tool you use. We have a, a couple of kind of pre-selected software where we know they're kind of best in class, and we like to get those standard processes. Yeah, like UX discovery, customer service tools, online marketing tools, to get those on the paved road. And then everything else, the founder should dabble and experiment and be kind of cutting edge, but you make your life a lot easier when you do all the stuff where you're not reinventing the wheel all the time. And also then central services can help you in that. And that's kind of just kind of our operating playbook, where we feel it's the best balance between total efficiency and still being adventurous and having fun with all the things that really matter. And that's usually the product which you sell. And there you want to be kind of the best in the world, but not with things like, hey, picking your own customer service tool. That's like, customer service has done that for you, and they can offer 24/7 customer service on a first level, then across SaaS group. And that's how you benefit from the group benefits while staying independent. And it's just kind of the way we operate.
Yeah, fascinating. All right. Well, just one kind of last question. What is a one thing, one criterion that's never changing when you're looking at a company to acquire for SaaS Group? And what would be your hack, if there is any, or just best advice for the founders that are looking for an exit and have SaaS Group on their list as a potential acquirer?
Yeah, the one thing that never changed, I think, is the people. Like, it's like there should be a connection. So I think the founders should, just like when you hire someone or when you allow an investor in, the same should apply for an exit. you, my main advice should be, you want to work with people where you would even work with them if there would be no contract, just on a handshake basis, and you have the feeling that that's the right home for your business, which you've built. It's kind of your baby as a founder. It's like your baby. You've built this for many, many years, and it's it's quite, and I can tell that from my own experience, it's quite a change in your life if you basically have to hand over your business to someone else, or you sell it, even if you stay on board, which I did as well with Cito in the early times. And so you want to work with people you want to work with. And we might not be right for everyone. I think there are some people who say no, like those SaaS group people. They're weird. They're all over the world, and it's like, where are they? And you want to be in an office and wear ties and something, and then it's like, no, we're not the right ones for you. Sure, there's some private equity folks who are much better, but you should listen to your gut and to kind of interact with a few people, not just with one, but really kind of do your own research also on your acquirer equally as everything else. Because your acquirer means, okay, how are your own people treated? How is your product treated? What's the culture like? And you don't want it to be messed up, because then, yeah, sure, you got maybe you have the money, maybe you get a little bit more money from someone else, but at the end of the day, your brand is killed, your people are unhappy, they all come back to you, it's like, why did you sell us? That doesn't make you happy. So my main advice would be, yeah, look at the people who want to acquire you just as much as you would look at a hire or a co-founder or a VC.
Right. I was just talking yesterday with the founder on a podcast, and they're going through an exit. And when she was talking about an exit, her advice was to find an exit where where an acquirer is a partner that
Yeah.
is ready to take your product to the next level. And I
Right.
was like, wait, but that's us.
Yeah, that's us. Though everybody claims that, I think that's the thing. Most people would say they want to develop that, but the chemistry has to be right.
That's true. That's true. And now I remember our interview when you were when you were hiring me. That was fun. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Tim, for this conversation. It's always fun talking with you. I mean, I know it all, right? But it's always kind
Yeah.
of nice to hear your perspective and the ideas that you have behind it. So thanks so much for sharing this story.
Thank you.
And yeah, as always, happy to do it anytime again.
We will.
Thanks, Tim, and take
Thank you.
care.